Chief Officer for Gender and Inclusivity. Just to give us context, give us a bit of background so that probably you can get a sneak peek as to how the county is operating the particular sector around inclusivity. Then possibly later on we can just have conversations in terms of what lessons can the county pick around innovation as we look at the issue of inclusivity. So a round of applause for Mariam Dubo Dahir. Karibu Chief.
Thank you so much, Chief. First of all, I feel very grateful or rather honored to be here with you this afternoon to share this moment of sharing ideas with the young you. I want to introduce to you the gender and inclusivity in the mainstreaming of gender activities in the county sectors and responding to the gender needs of the city people. The sector derives its mandate from the following legislative frameworks: the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the National Policy for Gender and Development, the National Disability Act, so it's a bit broad, but here for gender this particular day. The Nairobi City County Persons with Disability Act, the Nairobi City County Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Management Act of 2021, the Urban Areas and Cities Act, and the County Government Act 2012. The sector also is anchored by the County Integrated Development 2022. And for just to clarify, rather than what I just said, we've had the department, the domicile, education, social service, youth, and sports earlier on. But the governor found it wise that he wants to have a sector that is exclusively for gender and matters of inclusivity, and therefore, in his executive order number 1, 2023, this sector was formed, and we now have a separate chief officer and an entire department for gender. So that's a commitment from the government of Nairobi County on this particular mandate. So our mandate as a sector is to coordinate and promote gender and disability mainstreaming in the county development processes, promote and manage programs for children, women, and people with disabilities, address issues of gender-based violence and prevention and awareness, establishment and management of safe houses, or rather safe shelters for survivors of gender-based violence, promote and ensure compliance with the 2/3 gender rule and preferences and reservations targeting special interest groups, including women. Establishment of units for children with disabilities, women economic empowerment programs, women in leadership training programs, mentorship and support for women and persons and children that are vulnerable, including orphans. Gender and inclusivity sector with all other sectors. Gender and disability champions have been appointed to ensure that gender issues are mainstreamed within gender sectors, within the county government sectors. Innovative technology can be bridged to close the existing inequalities between men and women and persons with disabilities towards a more inclusive society. You will hear me talk about persons with disabilities, them. So we are gender and inclusivity, and therefore we include everybody. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So if you hear me digress and talk about persons with disabilities, it's in my blood. So you'll be here with me. So Kenya has made significant progress in bridging gender and socioeconomic technology. Yes. However, there's still much work to be done. Nairobi City County, in partnership with the national government, the private sector, and society organizations, seek to reduce gender and socioeconomic technology of the internet and mobile networks in urban areas, as well as reducing the cost of internet access. An initiative that the national government, through the Ministry of Information, Communication and Digital Economy, is undertaking. The county government, through the startup and digital economy sector, is also decentralized in tech infrastructure through the establishment of 85 fully kitted incubation centers. Promote gender equality in education and employment. This includes encouraging girls to pursue careers in science, stereotypes and biases. This includes raising awareness of the negative impact of gender stereotypes on women's access to and use of digital technologies, and promoting positive role models for girls and women in the tech industry. Advocate for policies that support women's economic empowerment. This includes providing women with access to credit, markets, and other resources that they need to start and grow their businesses. Encourage women to take jobs in areas previously the preserve of men, such as the building industry and transport businesses. Establishment of a central database for persons with disabilities and women and survivors of gender violence. Training for persons with disabilities, I will not dwell on that. Economic support for women survivors of gender-based violence to enable them to support themselves and hence break the cycle of violence. Production of gender disaggregated data for planning. Map out packing persons with disabilities. I will not dwell much on that. In addition to that, the sector is open for collaboration in the following key areas. Support the development of women-led tech startups and businesses in connecting with women with mentors, training, and funding opportunities. Creation of more opportunities for girls and women to participate in other tech events. These events can help to expose girls and women to the possibility of career in technology and to connect with them with the mentors and other role models. Encourage the media to portray women in positive light in relation to technology. Media can play a significant role in shaping public perceptions of women and in technology by portraying women as competent and capable users and creators of technology. The media can help to break down gender stereotypes and encourage more girls and women to pursue careers in the technology industry. Collection of data, gender-related data. Obtaining data in cases of gender-based violence has been the biggest challenge in the development of interventions. There are multiple platforms that share gender data, which leads to double counting and hence poor planning. And therefore, we really need support and collaboration in that field. Fast track the processing of issuance of cards for persons with disability and persons that are marginalized, groups that are stigmatized in one way or the other. Ease of mobility and accessibility of information on available county services. For example, consider the challenge of visually impaired persons. Increase accessibility to health services for youth and persons with disabilities, women and persons that are marginalized. The youth often shy away from health facilities or rather developing behaviors that are positive health seeking in the society. Accessible and safe public spaces, our markets, our schools, our streets, the public toilets, recreation facilities should be safe and accessible, and this is something that the county government is ensuring. But we always need the collaboration of the public, the private sector, the national exhaustives, and significant progress in bridging citizens with
so much for sorry. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for that, Madam Mariam. So we'll go into the panel session. Sorry, my name is Grace and I'm the project manager at Kayana. So we'll go into the panel session. I'd like to invite our moderator, Mercy Kimalat. She's the CEO at ASEC organization, and she'll tell us a bit more about what the organization is about, and then she'll introduce our panel speakers. Thank you, and welcome, Mercy.
So good afternoon. Hey. I thought some of you have had some nice lunch. For those of us who are so Kenyan, we have taken tea. Good afternoon. Yes, it's a very interesting discussion that we're having today. So it naturally needs a lot of enthusiasm. When we talk about policy, we're discussing things that can change lives, not only for our generation, but even for the ones to come. So I'm really happy to be here and happy to host every one of you for this session today. My name is Mercy Kimalat. So I'm the founding CEO for ASEC, which stands for the Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya. We're a membership organization that brings together over 85 entrepreneur support organizations that work tirelessly with entrepreneurs, right from ideation stage, helping them build a prototype, helping them commercialize that innovation, even up to growth stage where now they can access capital and markets, and more so also supporting them on the scale up where now they attract larger financing through venture capitalists or through angel networks to help them scale their solutions across not only Kenya but across Africa. So I'm really happy to be here today and moderating this session. And I have a wonderful group of panelists with me. Funny enough, we all have a tech background. I don't know whether, Grace, it was by design, but that is fantastic, as because we're actually using our knowledge and putting it into practice. So allow me to introduce my panelists on stage, and I'll start with Madam Mariam Dahir, who's the Chief County Officer on Gender and Inclusivity from Nairobi County. And kindly give her applause. Welcome. And then also we have Hilda Mora, who's the CEO and founder of Ezesha. And also we have Nyaruwai Muhoro, who's the founder and chief commercial officer of Infinity Tech Africa. Then also closely behind her is Tracy Mwangi, who's the co-founder of The Ring and Zaimis Limited. Tracy also explained why we have two names in one company, but lovely to have you. And then finally, the man of the hour is Kelvin Joka, who's the head of digital products and strategy at Diamond Trust Bank. So welcome, Kevin. Can we have the microphones? Wonderful. Wonderful. So allow me just to give a bit of a context of why this discussion is very important today. So in today's rapidly evolving technology landscape, it's really imperative to address the persistent gender and socio-economic disparities that are existing in access to and utilization of technology. Inclusively, Women in Track, which is the session that you're all part of, is really an integral part of the Innovate Nairobi Tech Week, designed to shed light on the importance of fostering a more inclusive and diverse tech ecosystem with a specific focus on empowering and elevating women in the technology industry. This track aims to bring together thought leaders, innovators, professional enthusiasts such as yourselves, and also even the county government to really engage in meaningful discussions, share insights, and explore actionable solutions to really bridge the gender gap in technology. The panel discussion today that we're going to have is going to be exploring the different policies and also the strategies to help bridge these divides, seen within the gender and also socioeconomic sectors, and also foster greater inclusivity, equal opportunity, and empowerment for all. So as we begin this session, I just want us to do a quick introduction for all the panelists, just to share a bit about their background and also why this session is very important for them. And I'll hand over to Mariam. Thank you so much for those. Oh, you want to give a clap? Why not? Yes. It takes a lot of work and dedication and sweat to actually, come this far in your journey. So we really do appreciate you and thank you for that. So looking at the current landscape, we're now in what they call the knowledge economy or the fourth industrial revolution, whereby it just simply means we're doing more smart automation. We have more embedded technologies such as AI, blockchain, and many other emerging technologies. But then we're also seeing a lot of disparities in the gender and socioeconomic disparities that are ongoing. So I just want to ask my panelists also and want to address to each one of you, given your different environment and work setting, what are the gender and socioeconomic disparities that actually you observed in accessing technology, but also adopting it, whether at personal consumption level or even at this level, for example, for women-led or women-owned businesses or for the youth. So I'll start with Mariam.
Women. Yeah. So how do we, where we sit as Pesesha solve for this problem? And there's so many ways we've worked together with my team to include more women since we started Pesesha in 2017. And one of the key things that we've been doing a lot where we've seen results is financial education. I think there's also the cultural issues that we cannot ignore, the stigma, the lack of understanding and knowledge for women to access credit, and it starts from there. So we've done a lot of work, not just by ourselves, by working with partners to come together and say, how do we start educating women on access to credit, why it's important to them, and what do they need to be financially included. So there's a lot of work that we've had to do with to even get women to be financially included. It's not just about giving them credit. It's also about educating them. So that takes a village to bring that financial education. It takes a lot of partnerships, and I'm glad I'm here together with my colleague Diana, who leads some of those financial education programs to bring more women, first understand need for credit, get the right knowledge, because we've seen the more you empower women with the right knowledge, even when they get the credit, the more informed and their repayment is actually much more better, because they are able to be first educated before they access credit, so they know where to put it. And when they put it into use, it not only just helps them, it helps their community and it helps the entire, generational effect. So that's the advantage that we've seen in our work and we continue to do. And then lastly, in the workspace, I think for us in the fintech space, there's not so many women. And, I'll talk about also just generally the banking space. I think as far as I remember my statistics, the last I saw was there's less than 5% in the top level of the banking and the financial sector. Women at the CEO level or at the C level, really making decisions. And as you know, Africa is driven by financial services. Mercy talked about the fourth industrial revolution. We cannot ignore that as far as Kenya, as far as Africa goes, mobile money is still the driver of almost everything we do, and financial services sit at the center of that. So if you don't have women sitting in those board meetings making decisions about financial services, the products that are being designed, then we're definitely leaving a lot of the solution on the table because we don't have also women included in those board meetings. So we've done a lot of work. From where I sit as the CEO, I've embraced, a lot of women to be part of the product design. We have a lot of women in our data science department, our tech team, helping to design these products, because if you involve women at that level as well, they are also able to design the right products that are strategically going to solve these inequalities problems. Thank you.
I will talk about access to internet and affordability to internet. The first being access. We know that in urban areas, the mobile network is easily available, and you have 4G, you now have the 5G, and you're able to connect with the mobile internet on your phone. There is also access to the device. So we know that now you can get a device of up to 5,000 bob that is internet enabled, so you will be able to access your internet there. But what if you live in a town like Narumoro? I come from Narumoro in Nyeri County. You have to go to an urban center to be able to get an internet access. The rest of the majority of the country is covered by the edge technology, which is not internet enabled. Also, there's the cost of the device. So there they will be using mainly a kabambe, so they will not be able to access the internet. And even in the urban areas, you will talk about somebody who has an internet-enabled phone, and there is the 5G available, the 4G available, but they need to buy data bundle. How much money do you have access to be able to get your transport to go to college or to go to work and buy your internet bundles? So if you don't have a place where you're able to access free internet, you'll find that in this age of technology, in this age of information, there's a lot that will come by and pass you by unless you're able to access the information. So for me, a key point is how do we get to have more access to internet throughout the country, and to internet-enabled devices throughout the country. What are the initiatives that we can take towards that? And also make the internet affordable so that everyone is able to top up a 10 bob and access their phone calls and access their data and their SMSs at the same time. I think that would go a long way in giving access to information and to a lot of the things that will come with the information. You'll be able to access your job opportunities. You'll be able to access the gigs that you do on a daily basis, and do a lot more with the internet that's available. Also entertain yourself. We know with TikTok age, there's a lot of entertainment that is going around through the internet. Thank you.
So when we think about the gender gap, I think for me, it was a very personal experience in school where we were 20% women in class. And actually, when I was in computer technology and then CS science had the same disparity. It is actually not an African issue alone. Globally, the uptake of STEM courses is at 30%, right? Locally, we are below 30%. JCOT was doing terribly at 20 or even below 20% in some classes. And so the adoption of technology starts dropping off. And for me, actually, the drop-off is what I've found to be very interesting. Math starts being hard at around class 5, 6. All of you are great, and then math starts being hard, and attitude enters, and you're told that girls are not supposed to do complex things. Girls are supposed to be pretty and all those kind of things. And then you drop off. Then we go to high school and physics becomes one of the most dropped subjects by ladies in school. Then it continues that way. When we come to STEM, we actually have the 20%, but software developers produced from these schools are actually 92% to 8%. So only 8% of those who actually graduate in STEM courses, or let me say computer science or computer technology courses, then become software developers. So even after studying in that 20%, there's even a higher drop-off. If you check 8% in my class, maybe only one or half of somebody then was able to do software development. And the disparity then you're able to see even in our households. As she said, internet access, you say women are less likely by 39% to access internet even with a mobile-enabled phone, with an internet-enabled phone in a place with internet access in those areas. So one of the things for me I would like us to discuss and to address is how do we make the narrative of technology, how do we make this thing that we've seen to be very complex and very masculine more available and inclusive and relatable to everybody. One of the last things I'd like to finish was we're discussing this thing with my sister yesterday, and we're remembering the cartoons we've watched, right? A lot of children are influenced by cartoons. Every girl likes Frozen right now, Dora the Explorer, you know, so the cartoons that they're liking right now. During our time, we had a lot of things that we liked. One of them I loved was Puff Girls, about hero girls. One of them was pink, one of them was tough green and that. But the scientists were Dexter's Laboratory, a guy. Phineas and Ferb had Dr. Doofenshmirtz, yeah? the big evil doctor, who was a male as well. And then I realized the conditioning of the lack of penetration of technology to girls comes from those small areas. If I'd ask all of you to think about, give me one cartoon where a girl was a scientist versus the male ones. I know you'd have to think for the girls. But for the men, you'd always, right, recall a boy scientist and everything. And so for me, one of the things I'd love us to discuss, and even as we discuss, have this panel, is at what point do we drop off the girls from knowing that science and technology is part and parcel of them? So the STEM courses or STEM life is also their way of life, and making it more inclusive and relatable to the girls as well.
I can't overemphasize the need for inclusivity as far as women are concerned in the age of technology. However, possibly to just grow it out a little bit further, and to Miriam's earlier point, persons with disability, the elderly, marginalized communities, refugees and the like, all of these particular persons are part and parcel of what forms the fabric of the social economic system, right? So over and above just looking at what kind of capabilities empowerment needs to also be put in place, a survey by WebAIM had indicated that 1 in 10 websites would not be inclusive enough to actually cater to such persons, people with disability and the like. Why I actually pick this out is, if you think about people in technology today, half the time with the developers I have to work with in the office, they're always on the internet trying to find a solution to a particular problem they may be working on. Now, if we contemplate this being a consideration that the information that they gather, the information that they consume to actually aid them either in their self-education, seeing as most developers or most persons in technology utilize these ways of learning, it could be one of those key areas that I believe is also a shortcut, if you will. And that permeates across both male and female. And to the points raised by their fellow panelists are actually true. The cost of the internet will actually be part and parcel of that consideration. The economic opportunities that are available, say for example, for the woman in the workplace. And if the ends being want to play a part within technology, I think you have to work 10x, 20x hard to actually penetrate and find yourself in a position where you would be in the space of technology or a particular industry that's leveraging technology. So it's a multiplicity of factors. And if I contextualize to where we are presently, Africa, Kenya for that matter, certain social factors also come to play. For the longest time I would have to think is, we've always seen women as the homemakers. They're the people who will nurture. Your place is with your family, whereas they also have ambitions of their own, right? So it's really taking that forward and trying to figure out what are those things that may become a barrier technology is actually one of those things that if solved for, maybe gives the woman more access or more capability, if I will, that can actually traverse more. You can still manage a home, and you can still suffice to actually run a professional career, right? So in my own opinion, I think those are some of those two things that possibly add up. And to the panelists' points, I think they're all in one or the other way related. And the solutions to this, I believe, is trying to identify what are those practical, actual actions that can be taken on either from a society level, also from a corporate level if we're thinking workspace and the like, and also from a government point of view as regards various policies that they would be putting in place. Some of those affirmative action we always hear about, it's really not just about funding, it's the education that you'll have to pass across. It's the opportunities that you present for such persons that may be marginalized or are put on the sideline as regards the various types of solutions we'd like to see implemented to address that problem.
No, that's quite rich. I think I've also learned a lot from each and every one of you in the context of how the disparities look like, you know, in terms of the socio-economic, but also for gender. And some of the things that you have mentioned was one, access to internet. There was also the social cultural challenges, which also ties in with role models, right? Because if you don't see someone who's leading or being part of a certain sector, then it's very hard for someone to follow. And it goes back to the role of cartoons, you know, creative economy in a way. How does that influence that? The other things that I was picking out was definitely the key need for infrastructure. We might have all these great ambitions, but if there's no fiber connecting there or no satellite technology in the different marginalized areas, then how can we have internet connectivity and also penetration there? The other aspect is looking also at skills, basic skills. I remember running a training where we actually had to train people on how to use WhatsApp first, then now talk about WhatsApp for business. You know, something very simple that we assume it should be easy to use, but how then can even an entrepreneur use their phone device to access internet connectivity? And that also just ties in with something you mentioned, Kelvin, about there are ways that we can actually begin having these challenges documented and also having policies that help to enable a more inclusive and also progressive culture for the social and economic integration within technology. So I just wanted to give, maybe perhaps get a few examples of what are some of the policies that you've seen at both a local level, whether it is county-based or national, and even sometimes also pegging back on the international policies that we can even leverage, that we can also see in how to adopt. So I'd like to invite Tracy to give a feedback, and then also Hilda, and then Mariam, and any of you can.
One of the policies I've actually enjoyed is, I don't know whether I'd say, but it is a digitization of government processes. In as much as most of us don't see it as like a whole policy put in place, if all of you can be honest with yourselves, how much has eCitizen helped people to start even learning about entering into different things and being able to pay? The other one I remember is like the county payment systems. Right now, even in Kiambu, everybody pays via, you know, M-Pesa, and they do, like they've been forced to learn how to use the USSD code. And when you go there, even the person who's attending to your parking will tell you, fanya hivi. You know, somebody will explain to you and educate you. That's one of the things I really appreciated. The second one, I think that was at my time, I'm also sure it's the same, is even the cutoff marks, right? That encouraged girls to be able to access STEM courses. And during, I'm saying during my time, I'm not that old, by the way, yeah? But you know, the system has changed. I have to recognize that time has passed. But when we were entering into campus, girls were allowed to enter, like, let's say 77 for the male, and then girls were allowed to at a lower course, at a lower grade, but not too far off. But it also allowed the ability of people to now take up these challenging courses, right? So I think for me, I just want to mention those two and allow Hilda to speak on the rest.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to say about what's happening here. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. We are still waiting for the startup bill to happen because I think there's need to bring more startups to succeed. We haven't seen more success stories, especially locally. I think some of these things, just ease of doing business, you know, taxation We've seen the finance bill just come in, and there's a lot of what we have to say as startups, which, you know, some of those things we are asking, how are we going to be able to survive? How are we going to be able to make it, you know, in the next 5 years? So what I'm saying in short is there's a lot of, you know, bringing on the table entrepreneurs or SMEs that hasn't yet been done to have a voice on these policies. That said, there's a lot we can learn from what's happening, even regionally, globally, you know, harmonization of policies. I think I really like what's happening, you know, in countries like, of course, even Nigeria. Let's come closer to Africa. You know, just harmonization. When you're being regulated as a small business, you're dealing with one regulation, you know, and like here at home, you're dealing with, you know, regulators who potentially don't even speak to each other. You know, you move from one regulator to the next. So there's really need for harmonization of policies. And it allows for ease of business, allows for investments to come into the market, investors to be interested to invest. And, you know, globally, at a global level, you know, we could be talking of even investments, vehicles that actually help small businesses or startups to have that seed funding, because that's where the problem is. A lot of the investors want to come in when the company has already been set up. There is growth, there is profits, and there is customers, like where Pesesha is right now. But now who's going to invest in those early companies that are looking for investment? Government needs to think about that, because that's where you create jobs. That's how you create opportunities, is if you push for more entrepreneurship, even from school. Our education system, in my view, still has a long way to go. We can learn from what's happening globally in terms of policies, because entrepreneurship starts there. I started my journey of entrepreneurship when I was back in Strathmore. You know, that's where it started, you know, just being in the right place, nurturing your entrepreneurship skills and learning from people who've done it, getting more practical stories in school really helped me to believe that actually I can be able to do it as well. So, you know, I think we really need to think about where do we need to start? And I think if I were to summarize 3 places, from a regulation, how do we make it easy for startups? Instead of stifling innovation, how do we promote more innovation with the regulations that are coming in the market? Finance bill and other policies we are starting to see coming into the market. How do we make sure that the SME is involved and their voice is also heard in the definition of those policies and coming up with them? And then lastly, how can we learn from what's happening globally and even regionally? Harmonization of policies and making sure that we're actually helping small businesses to flourish, because that's where the jobs are going to come from.
Just to add that the National Broadband Plan, a very ambitious plan by the government, they actually talk about creating highways of fiber optics. In the future, we are looking into a situation where, you know, the entire Kenya is covered, and everybody will be able to pick from where they are. So wherever you are, you're in the car, you're in the rural, you know, farthest end of Northeastern, you'll be able to access a fiber. So that's a very ambitious policy. If we, as a government, give it, see to it executed, then we are looking into a good feature of technology. But we are good at drafting, you know, ambitious policies. We are good at drafting policies that people borrow and prosper, but we are not good at seeing to its execution. But we are very hopeful, because we are in a new dispensation, that will be achieved. Also, the policy of procurement, our Public Procurement Act, is in one way or the other forces the government to embrace technology. We have got 25 steps, we call the e-procurement. So whether you are, you know, technologically blind or whether you are technologically friendly, you are forced to embrace technology in that regard, and therefore I see it's a very, you know, friendly policy in terms of embracing technology. Also, policies of educational inclusivity. policies that are very friendly to including technology in the education sector. But I know we've got so much to do in that field, and therefore, looking into the future, I don't want to preempt what is coming, but I'm seeing a very good future in terms of including technology. Yeah.
I want to speak to public-private partnerships, and I will give 2 examples. I'm involved a bit with UNESCO, and I see that they hold a lot of workshops with the education system in a bid to put interventions. They do a lot of workshops in various schools to promote the STEM subjects with the students, which actually has impacted because you will see increasingly there's a large number of students taking up the STEM subjects, sorry. And the intervention goes both to the students and to the educators, because they hold workshops for the students and they hold workshops for the teachers. That's for primary schools and that's for high schools. And they are aggressively doing this across the whole country, from county to county, and especially focusing on marginalized areas. So this will go a long way to improving the uptake of these subjects. I'll give a second example of Safaricom. As part of their social responsibility, they have 47 counties program, where they take a school in each of the 47 counties and do a mentorship, again, on the STEM programs. And this has been going on since the year 2014. So we are now in the year 2023, that's about 9 years. And the impact of this has been that there has been an increment in the number of students enrolling for campus from 10% to 18%, which is quite a positive impact. And for me, it's more involvement of the corporate organizations and the NGOs in intervening in the system to improve the digital uptake. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think for sure the policy, it sounds very broad and complex, but actually when you contextualize, it comes down to like what you talked about, tax incentives, whether it's allowing for different access to funds, access to government services. For sure, the e-citizen has allowed, I think, almost every Kenyan citizen to access a public good just through digitization of the government. So there are lots of good things already happening. I want to just also add to the conversation about like what us as ASEC we're doing. So we actually conducted a research for the Western Kenya. And as you know, Western Kenya is also one of the regions that really is also in a way lagging behind because of lack of support over the years. And we actually discovered something in the agriculture sector, that out of 75%, because you know Kenya is agriculture based, out of 75% of entrepreneurs who are involved in the agriculture value chain, it's only 10% that are women and youth that are actually participating. That's a huge gap already seen. So one thing that we actually tried to do was conduct a research on the business and policy and regulation landscape to understand really what are the barriers that are hindering the women, youth, and even also marginalized communities, like people with disabilities, or the undeserved communities that have not also been recognized, looking at refugees. So from that research, we actually were able to engage the Lake Regional Economic Bloc, which also in a way is the regional government, to really relook at their policy structures, look at how they're marketing the government funds, the different government programs to target those people. And also, I really have to appreciate Mariam for being here. If you look at Nairobi County in itself, they have actually, and if you listen to what she was saying, they created a specific office for the gender and inclusion, which I think is a huge move that the government also is taking note of and ensuring that there's inclusivity. The other example was I came across in 2021 was with an NGO, and KEBS, Kenya Bureau of Standards, where they actually created a standard for all entrepreneurs who are developing products and services, that they must have an inclusivity feature. So whether simple things such as reducing the brightness on our website, or even how someone who's deaf or has a visual impairment, they're still able to access services. So we're still seeing a lot of good things happening, but of course, there's need to accelerate that and have more inclusivity and embed it in policy that can actually outlive, the current government, and also still provide support to the Kenyan and even East African community. So there's one question, one insight that came out was the need for skills and knowledge training. Hilda, you mentioned about how you're providing financial training for women just to be able to access these financial products. And also, Tracy, you talked about, I know you didn't mention it here, but we were talking about how to upskill the youth, right? Training youth from all over across the country, building them up within your own organization and helping to place them in other businesses. If you're looking at the kind of training and education you're offering, what are some of the innovative approaches you've used to really bring this divide, to really reduce the divide? And also, Kelvin, if you can also add on how a bank, because you also are placed in different regions across Kenya, how you've also been able to embrace more women, youth, and even people who are marginalized to access financial products and services. So kindly just share with us a bit more on that. I'll start with Hilda, Tracy, and then Kelvin.
Yeah, very briefly, I think just to summarize, because there's a lot of, partnerships that are involved to even enable and bring those skills to the women. Because sometimes we find it's already people who are already working with those women. For example, I'll give some of the examples. We've recently just partnered with FSD. And FSD, already has a couple of programs they are supporting that actually touch on, inclusivity and trainings and capacity building. So we just come in to bring our credit expertise and, of course, also help to scale those programs in a big way and provide the infrastructure, to help those women to be now even included at a deeper level. I think the other opportunities we've had, of course, is looking at social groups. As we know, most of these women are possibly in a chama or in a social setting. So we've also taken advantage of those social groups to go and reach to these women who are already doing business or they are already working to do some sort of productive activity. So we've then taken advantage of those groups, and actually they're already doing it in different levels. So just educating them becomes part of the activity that then is embedded into the way they do things or in the way that they network in their groups. Of course, technology, at the end of it all, we've embraced technology. Our platform has the ability to basically use channels of offline and online to allow inductiveness of how we educate and contextualize and tailor-made. So there's a lot of data-driven approach that my team and I take. We have a lot of data that we've collected, continue to process, and work with partners as well to understand the needs of women. Then when we take this data, we now start to tailor-made, programs for women and actually use, tools, different tools, digital tools, to ensure that they are not spending a lot of time to travel from one place to another. But then technology, even from a simple SMS that we send them, they're able to get inductive messages that tell them, this is how you improve your credit scoring. This is how you get a credit score from Pesesha. So we have a platform called Patascore that allows women to be trained on how to improve their credit scores. So when they come to that platform, they are first educated. This is how you collect data. This is how you use your mobile transactions to build your credit history. And that continues to be an ongoing process. So technology has played a big role in how we provide the inductive trainings to women.
I think I'm reiterating what Hilda said. The first thing is through partners, working with other people. So like for us, even as a sort of development firm, we work with young people like African Tech Girl. She's having a very nice session for children there. And then we work with her in terms of empowering her. How do we bring those she's trained then to come to us and train further in terms of their skills? And even with schools as well, right? We just work with them. The second thing is we use technology from what we see as complex to the bottom, as Hilda said, a simple SMS. So we have a very fun platform called Tuni. We built one. It's a trivia game. And it's as bubbly as ever. But the other colors are purple, orange. You know the female bright, here I am colors. That's what we've done for us. And we've done it on web. We've done it as an SMS survey. And we've partnered with even people like Nimechanuka to be able to ensure that sex education for the youth is passed in a way that's relatable to them. And even with the knowledge of the socioeconomic disparities, then for those who are not able to access the web or internet, we have it still on SMS. So we are able to capitalize technology through and through, not for its fun and, how can I say, forward nature of saying we are doing this and we are doing this, we've gone to blockchain and all those kinds of things, but we understand where we are as a nation, our people, their needs, and then work with them. And that I think as well, just partnerships and ensuring that tech goes through and through in serving the people rather than just having fun tech.
I'm curious, have you created a cartoon?
Actually, there's a cat. Our logo is a very fun dancing cat when you score, you know? So yes, it's very fun.
Yeah. So as Diamond Trust Bank, there are multiple initiatives that have actually been running. And if you'll allow me, I'll try and give some context as to how we got where we are and what we're planning on where we want to go forward. Through conjunction with the Kenya Bankers Association, there's been an annual financial literacy training program that was running. And this is usually focused on women in business, SMEs and the like, as well as trying to encourage youth into more capability as to how they can use financial systems for the purposes of running their business. Now, this is really the background of where DTB started as far as how do we try and generate enough content or education that can help people understand how they can run successful and more sustainable enterprise. Now, what happened is part and parcel of this training started introducing more and more use of digital tools, and especially in running your business. Now, what that bore out of the engagements that we had was initially, how can you use digital financial services to actually enable you run a more adequate business? Initially, the goal was to try and address the issues of information asymmetry, more so what would affect most businesses as regards how do you actually present yourself to a bank and ensure you'd be seen as a credit-worthy enterprise and one that would be palatable enough for an entity such as a bank to take on a risk and say, for example, give you lending. Now, what that led us to do is, in getting questions and interactions with some of these particular attendees, we came to realize that quite a high percentage was actually women. So what DTB did in one of its annual sessions is they started a foundation which started grooming women in business. If you've read about it or seen it on social media, this has presently been working with women within the eastern side of the districts in Nairobi, Isili and the like, Rose Women Foundation. So in educating them as to how they use technology and more so within the digital financial services space, the need kept growing. And it stopped being just financial literacy, but more so how do we actually equip you? Because most of these women, interestingly enough, know what they want to achieve and they are running their business in whatever scale, small or large. So it started turning more and more into how do I actually leverage technology to actually run my business. And I like your example because that's exactly where it went. How do you use Facebook to set up your business page? How can you get impressions to actually drive business? How do you create groups that you can do marketing with? For a guy who's running an e-commerce platform, how is it that you're supposed to use certain techniques or basic things like CEO? It's a big thing, but it's really something that helps you learn more and more of how technology helps you run your enterprise. Now, this has been growing over time, and through our citizenship and sustainability arm of the bank, is now actually going a step further and is focusing now more into other critical areas of the social economic fabric of Kenya. Now, in coming days, we should actually be seeing some of these programs being rolled out into market. But I think the key thing to take away there as an organization, we have seen the need that it's already beyond the normal financial inclusion. It's beyond how you use technology to run your business, but it's more so giving you the actual tools and skill sets that will help you run that particular enterprise. Happy to mention that through that particular program, we've actually borrowed some of those learnings and brought them into the side of tech. Through Astra, there are different communities that are being set up, and I really hope some of the women on the panel here today are part of those communities you're trying to build. There are different communities we're trying to bring up, and especially to try and permeate more and more into speaking how a financial partner could be part and parcel of that transformation journey for your own initiative. There are communities for founders, and now these cut across both male and female, but there are specific ones that have actually now been born out of activities. In March, we had Women in STEM being celebrated globally. DTB positioned herself as, we want to be associated with this particular movement. And through the tech that we're trying to bring in as far as embedding financial services is concerned, it's only realistic that we try and contextualize it to the normal conversation of the day. Women want to break into tech. There are capabilities that you will need within the enterprise you're running. More so tech-enabled businesses for that matter, and trying to address what are all these particular points you must put consideration into. How can DTB be that financial services partner that just goes beyond financial services and possibly even gives you the capabilities to start thinking of, what do I need to think about governance? What do I need to actually look into regards operationalizing my entity, and ensuring that we can underpin technology as the key enabler within these particular conversations. So as a financial organization, these are the things we're looking at. And through one of the points Tracy has also highlighted is, through strategic partnerships, you're trying to find, there are people who are doing this way better than we can. We're only scratching the surface. How can we embed ourselves such that we create an ecosystem where you have, say, a digital financial services provider that can be part and parcel of an education system, well, let me not use the word education system, an empowering entity that's trying to permeate education or learnings about technology and how those feed into your business enterprise. And in so doing, we're not doing it ourselves, because quite frankly, I think if we raise the bar as to how we see enterprise technology, women in technology, the more marginalized within the space of technology coming up, there's actually more opportunities for all to be had. At least that's the position we're trying to take, and we're trying to ensure that we can be a face that you see within this particular journey as we move forward.
I think just to add one of the things I just wanted to add is, one of the things we even do as a company, as Zinamis, is pushing techies to join other conversations. Normally for techies, we hold up with ourselves and we discuss what we want to build, what are the cool things, and that's what we do. But one of the things we've actually pushed our members, and I mean our staff and everybody that we speak to, is join other conversations. When moms are having discussions on chamas, sit in, learn what their problems are, listen to what they're saying amongst themselves. It's the only way that then the partnerships we build, the tools we build, then will be empowering and then enable these things that we're discussing. So one of the things, like, I personally sit on the board of Switch as the head of digital in the digital committee, and I'm also a board member at Youth Cafe. So Youth Cafe is an advocacy youth company. Switch Media is a media house. I have no media experience, and I definitely don't have any advocacy experience at the moment. But then being part of these conversations then allows us to hear what are the problems they have, and what are the tools we can build with the skills we already have. So that's one more thing I wanted to add.
No, thank you so much. I can definitely feel the passion coming in from the panelists, so keep it coming. Yeah, so a lot of things that are coming from the discussion, one is very strongly partnerships and collaboration. So everyone needs to partner and collaborate with someone who has a better strength, an existing community, plug in and accelerate that agenda. The other thing that I really liked was the offline and online interventions. As much as we're talking about digital inclusion, that is the ultimate goal, to have 100% of socioeconomic groups and gender being able to access digital services and products. But how do we get there? We have to have different strategies, and having the offline strategy as well helps us to get there. And that also ties in with how using digital platforms, the existing communities that are existing to help track progress. So example was the Pata score, and I think also you had a 2K, where different tools are actually helping these marginalized groups, as well as also the gender, to track their progress and even see that they're actually making milestones. Might not be the greatest milestone, but they're making incremental milestones as they achieve digital transformation. And the other aspect that I really liked was I want to use your term, socio-economic fabric. So even as different actors, how do we integrate within the social economic fabric for the country, then now plug in our different programs, even products and services to target them. So going back into the discussion on partnerships and collaboration, we have a very good example which is called the Africa Continental Free Trade. How many of you have heard of it? From the audience? Quite a few. So this is actually an agreement that was signed by 54 African states to actually say we want to now start trading amongst each other, right? And also we have the African Union Agenda 2063, and also we have many bilateral agreements between Kenya and other, like what you mentioned about the international countries, for example, Germany, we have Finland, we have many other countries that Kenya already has existing bilateral agreements. But now my question is, how then can we use this opportunity to really encourage more knowledge sharing, as well as also technology transfer and adoption to really bridge the digital divide? And also, if you have any examples, maybe from your experience or from the entrepreneurs you've been supporting, to also share this as models. Who'd like to go first? I can nominate Nyaroy to go first, and then we can also have Kelvin, you can also add on to that, and also maybe Hilda.
Okay, we have operations across a few countries. We are in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana. Not registered in Malawi, but we also have operations there. So we started our business in the year 2016, and at the time, what it involved to get into a new country is myself traveling, going there, getting what are the regulations around registering a business. Some of the countries require you to have a local partner of a certain percentage shareholding. So you go through the manual physical process of starting a business. And at the time it was quite tedious and would take a lot of time and a lot of finances. And eventually when you start, some of the countries required you to have a physical office. So you have to get a space somewhere and employ someone who sits there and now talks to your customers. Lately, from the year 2020, we still are growing the business, but now it's much easier. So we'll talk to the telcos. Most of our business comes through the telcos. If I want to go to MTN Rwanda, I'll talk to the telcos in MTN Rwanda, find out what are the requirements of connection are. I will do the requirements from my Nairobi office. I don't need to physically travel there. I don't need to have a physical office. I don't need to have an employee sitting there because I have one platform. And since my platform is hosted on the cloud, it's able to give service everywhere. So now rolling out is much easier. Getting partnerships is much easier. And with the regional partners we have, because we have customers who have operations regionally, who will require us to deploy the service we are giving them, say Kenya, to deploy the same service in Ghana, it's much easier now and it's much more cost effective now. So yes, the partnerships do work and it makes business much, much easier. And also now, once you have your operation running in a new country, it's easier to onboard new customers because you're fully online. So you just need to run your ads on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and the customers come calling. Yeah, thank you.
Great. I've had to do a bit of reflection to see how this would actually pan out from a greater regional play. However, I do think there are certain key factors that we can actually borrow and or take forward. And to your earlier point about the bilateral agreements that exist, many a times I think the misunderstanding possibly that's there amongst the general population is that when such facilities exist, it's only assumed that trade is the only thing that's being considered. I think there's other key pointers that can actually be born out of it. For example, the key learnings that may exist in a particular developing market and have actually solved very localized problems may not be very different or very separate from what we'd be experiencing, say, for example, in Kenya. I think in the bilateral nature of not only trade and economic conversation, I think there also needs to be free flow of information as regards what was done, what problem was being solved, and how was it being solved. Now, I'd like to think of Africa as a big global village, and we have a lot of ties, especially within the social environments that we operate in. Now, that doesn't mean that the particular problem, say, for example, in Burkina Faso, would be one that's relatable in Kenya. However, it's the learnings that may be born out of, here's how we actually solve a very specific problem. And if I could use an example, if we look at how the various commercial banks in Nigeria came together and put NIBs together, by the time IPSL and the local switching capabilities we have, there is a lot I think we could borrow from such a scenario. And same applies to technology. And the beauty about technology is such that it's almost universal in its attributes, if I would say so. And in how it's also being utilized to ensure it can add on to more inclusivity, the applications of those, I believe, is really key. One of the other things that I even found very interesting as I was trying to do a bit of research for this particular panel, the scarcity of research and information. Quite frankly, many a times I do get a lot of questionnaires and forms that I feel about innovation, technology, how that's being applicable, but rarely do I actually see the outputs of that information and how it can be applicably put into practice for other parties. So for example, if we've gone ahead and figured out how we can solve, say, for agri-tech in a very specific manner, that is information I think we should have an information exchange of sorts that can be adequately utilized across board and across Pan-Africa for that matter, to ensure that if we are looking at collaborations that would permeate beyond Kenyan borders, this is something that could be utilized by other players or even individuals who may be looking at how can I start my own individual views as to how that should be addressed as a problem. Last but not least, and I certainly hope this would not be taken out of context, is I think there has to be advocacy. Now, whenever we have some of these platforms and we talk about how we want to collaborate, rarely do we actually put into place real actionable outputs for very specific industry or sector or very specific utilization of capabilities that we talk about. One of those would actually be technology. Most recently, yes, we've launched the Pan-African Payment Service. That's a good initiative, and I think it's a step in the right direction. But beyond payments and value exchange, I'm sure there's much more that we could be working towards. A lot of considerations, and if you look at most African markets, have had to deal with long, arduous processes of figuring out identity, as an example. Kenya figured it out with IPRS. We have NIDA, we have NIRA, and a lot of other countries are also trying to figure out the same. And to the earlier point highlighted about Kenya's government digitization, these are playbooks I believe that we could actually be advocating for and looking out for what are the key standards that could drive an African economy or an African market or an African fintech space, an African agri space, as regards what are the best standards that we could actually look out for. And if anything, if those could then be tied with, say, some of the multilateral organizations globally, then those could actually be sounding boards that give that more purpose, especially if we have to tie back to the Sustainable Development Goals, to give them some sort of global view that gives empowerment more to what would be an African case and ensure that this would be something that can be actually achieved across Africa.
I think summarize it so well in terms of just the key points. I think the only thing I'll just add is, I like to say, for partnerships to happen, we all have to put our egos, our logos, and our interests out of the door. Partnership happen because, as Kevin said, when we put all those things outside the door, I think there's, the bigger picture of what can we be able to achieve, and everyone starts to talk from the same script. Especially in a world of fintech, there's so much to do, but you'll find because of, and there's so much to solve for with just fintech. But because, everyone wants to hold on into their companies, we'll miss the big picture of solving for the African problems, yeah? Because, there's so many other challenges, whether it's regulation, whether it's what I talked about earlier, harmonization. When you go from one country to another, you're being regulated by a different regulator. If I move to Nigeria and I open shop there, another regulation is gonna hit me. So how do we then think about some of the umbrellas you've mentioned as a way to make it easier to launch in a new country, to solve this problem? If we already have a problem of SMEs, it's across Africa, it's a global problem. So why should Pesesha be always a new license for every market, So one of the ways we've solved that problem is by partnering with banks. So just recently, we've collaborated with a bank that's a regional bank. So every time we are going to those markets, we go with our bank. When we're thinking of global, we find a global partner every time we're going to those markets. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And, there's certain things that banks have, we don't have. They've figured out some of those things, regulation, much more ahead than us. So we've solved some of those problems by just partnering with, players that are already there in front of us, but of course also the need for bringing all the objectives that are aligned on the table. To Kevin's point, that's the only time that you get to, get things moving. Otherwise, we can all come to the table with the intention of partnership. But if we are all, thinking about what's our interest and how do we build our brands and our profits, I think we miss out the big picture.
No, thank you so much for those great insights. When you hear the word social inclusion or digital inclusion, it just means that there's a category of customers that have not yet been targeted. So if you're to put on your commercial mindset, it means that you're actually missing out a big business opportunity by not tapping into the marginalized communities to provide the actual needed products and services. And thank you so much for my panelists for just adding on to those different examples, and even the ones that we can benchmark with, which may not be related to digital technology, study for us to study on. I think for sure that we are lacking, and the ecosystem is documenting our own stories and also our own case studies. For example, we have great women here who are role models in digital, the digital sector, but who has documented the stories, right? And so one thing I know for our sector we are trying to do as an ecosystem builder is we actually developed an ecosystem portal whereby we actually invite all category of stakeholders to also begin contributing knowledge into the ecosystem. And I want to invite each and every one of you alongside also thinking about how we can continuously together work on designing products and services that can target these marginalized groups. So in closing, because I also want to give a chance for our audience to ask questions, looking at the future, what are some of the hopes and aspirations you have for a more inclusive and equitable digital future? And I'll start with Kelvin, working this way.
I hope to see a future where most of the considerations that we're always talking about, innovation, technology, are a story of the past, almost making it a staple, if you will. And to a point that was raised yesterday at the opening keynote speech, His Excellency John Sakaja did mention that we have to be intentional about it. And intention here I'd like to take away individually as a enthusiast of technology, is a player within the technology realm or space. I'd like to see more interaction where this is no longer just a conversation that's had between techies trying to solve a particular problem in the industry. I'd like to see the actionable actions that I see from the Nairobi County as an example. One of the things I truly believe will be a game changer, inshallah that works out as we hope for it to be, within the 85 or so wards that we have within the county. Those spaces create innovation that are within the various wards of Nairobi, and far more exporting this into the other counties as well. I think practical steps ensuring that there's one exposure to where innovation starts from. There's mentorship and or coaching that can lead you towards that in future. Now, the realities of the day are not all policies will actually be included to ensure that takes place. But the first step that we take and to be part and parcel of DTB that's trying to ensure that that can happen, because unless going and that all the other key players can be part and
self-made billionaire Noom, right? An amazing woman who went and co-founded Tinder, then came and did Bumble. Yet it is a story that is not as celebrated as ours. For me, that is what I hope for. A future where girls can be taught you don't have to be perfect, because in tech there's imperfection. You'll do your first product, it will fail. You'll do your second one, it will fail. Your third one, it will pan out. So for me, it is a future that embraces the girl child, and that the stories of people like Hilda, I was very excited to meet today, are then made be active, smaller things. Goes to Dex thing getting. Finally, for me, there's a phrase that is used bottom up. I will use it differently today. That tech includes everybody, every single person, whether you have Kabambe, whether you have iPhone 14, whether you're a girl from Kana, whether you're a boy. I hope technology includes and speaks to everybody from where you are to where you want to be. I think right now technology has sounded like a buzzword. We say AI, blockchain, all the fancy words. Tech is just a, ukisikia any tech discussion, you cannot even listen through a speech, right? Because it's buzzword after buzzword. So my hope is that tech finally starts from the bottom, including everybody to the top.
I'm not sure there's anything more to add because the narrative is very similar. The change begins with us. At Infinity Tech, we are a women-only organization. This is by design, but going through over and over, and you find the right fit, which is a joy to work with, very dedicated. I'd love to have a conversation one day where we're not talking about gender inclusivity, we're not talking about socioeconomic inclusivity, because we will already be there. I remember 20 years ago when the mobile phone started in the country, we would talk about, I remember I was in campus sometime, and would see people queuing at the Safaricom shops, long winding queues in town, who put to buy a SIM card. And a SIM card was to go for, I think, 1,000 bob or 2,000 bob. Today, everybody literally has a SIM card and a mobile phone, and they're able to make a call and do an SMS. It will be a joy to have a sitting the day that internet will be available for everybody. And we can say, I'm ordering my dinner through the internet. I'm talking to my children because I'm working in the office and they're doing their homework in the house, and we are having a conversation over the internet. I'm able to do my shopping over the internet. Because the Internet of Things really is where the world is going, is where the world is, and we need to catch up. So for me, that's the takeout.
Absolutely.
Hilda, let me also make a special request because you mentioned about Wezatele.
Yeah.
Hilda managed to actually have a very good buyout from an international partner. So kindly just, I know time is well spent, but just give us a brief about your journey building that solution back in, was it 2010? Around that journey, where even digital conversations were not even happening as much. So just give us a brief on that and how you managed to have an exit and even starting another startup called Pesesha.
Wow. Yes, I am that old. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, short story, I think it's public information, but really excited about seeing where the ecosystem has come from. You know, some of us, we've been there. We've been part of the initial part of the ecosystem. We've learned, you know, my background, I'm a software engineer. So we've been building for the last almost 15 years. That's where I have been. So my first company was Atele. I started it out from school. I studied in Strathmore, BBIT. Started, you know, my company there. Of course, my parents thought I was crazy, so I decided to go work just to make them happy. So I took my job in, I took a job in Coca-Cola, but I still continued building it. And then, of course, iHub, which was first innovation space, gave us, some of us, a platform to really build and meet the right people. At that time, when there was no money, investment, where do you go get a team? Where do you get crazy people to build stuff with you, where you don't know where it's gonna go? So for me, iHub was that environment. So fast forward, you know, I got a team of just software engineers like myself. We built this business in 2010 to 2015. It got acquired by Jumo back in 2015. We, of course, exited. That was one of the first exits, so we made a few mistakes. We made a few boxes of money, but also many learnings out of it, which, of course, I ended up putting it in a book, A Kenyan Startup Journey. You can also get it online. Pesesha, of course, 2 years down the line, I started Pesesha. I think my blood, if you cut me, I'm basically an entrepreneur. What's exciting about Pesesha, and just as part of my closing remarks, what I would want to see, and really what we're building at Pesesha. So, you know, of course, not to say that my previous journey was not important. It's the reason why we've been able to do a much more bigger job. So we've empowered more than 200,000 SMEs We're in Kenya, Uganda, and Ghana. I have a team of 60 people working in Pezesha. What is exciting, of course, we raised our pre-Series A round last year of $11 million. But that's really not what makes us even more excited about this journey, is the opportunity of creating more jobs. People who are in campus right now, where are they going to get jobs? You know, how many jobs are out there waiting for them? Where are the future jobs going to come from? So why we are excited about our vision at Pezesha is if we can continue to empower more SMEs, we can create more jobs for now and for the future. Whether it's through, you know, the credit that we provide them, the working capital. For every SME that we finance in Pezesha, at least 10 jobs are created. That's what we have in our data right now. So what that means is if we can partner, if we can collaborate with everyone here, including the banks, we can actually create much more bigger network effects that create more job opportunities for the future, for our children, for the generations, to be able to actually come in and create a much more better economy, not just here, but across Africa. I think from a personal level, you know, definitely want to see more women be more successful. I think sometimes it pains me that there's only a few stories to talk about, you know, the same people. I think we still need to change the narrative. We need to see more women's stories. We need to talk about those stories in forums like this, because that's how you create a generational effect. When you start to create those stories and when you talk about those stories for our children to do better than us, that's the only way we can talk about a better future, and everything else we've discussed here will become possible if we accelerate putting our stories on the map and getting more women to come in STEM, more women to practically do hard things. I'm a big believer of doing hard things, and if we can be able to do hard things, I think we can change this country and we can change the entire world. Thank you.
Yeah, again, everybody has said this, but I would wish a situation where we will have universal internet access, regardless of your gender, your socioeconomic status, your geographical position, or wherever you are in this country, then you're able to access internet. The other thing that I would wish to see in the future, and in fact in the near future, is technology that's designed responsibly, with privacy, ethically, so to speak, where everybody is safe in the technological space. And therefore, when we develop, when we design technology, everybody is comfortable in that particular space, whether you are a woman, whether you are a young girl, whether you're an old man, or anybody in the society is very comfortable in the digital space. Right now, we have a situation where we fear, especially in the field of digital content creation, there's a lot of cyberbullying, especially towards women. Therefore, women really fear to venture into some of the technological opportunities that exist. I would also wish to see a situation where we'll have, stronger public-private partnership addressing issues of technology. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to open the floor for questions. Anyone has questions? I think we have to. Yeah, okay. The microphone is coming. Yeah. Anyone else has a question? Put in the line. Okay.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask the panel the question. First, I'd like to also thank the panel for giving us very informative or rather good insights on what is happening in the tech space. My name is Horace. I'm a business development manager for a company called Data Culture. So we are targeting new to credit customers who have a thin files or rather have no credit history. So we do have a platform. It's called Odyssey, which aids in smartphone financing. So I've heard the panel talk a lot about inclusivity And we are looking at an instance whereby now women or even the general public can get access to more phones, all right? So before even accessing internet, definitely you have to have a phone. So that's what our platform aids. So mine is more of a challenge to them. In such a conference, you get to see them. You get to hear about their companies. But once you start looking for them at company level, it's very hard to find them. You'll find maybe they're in meetings, they are out of town, etc. So my request is, after the conference, if we could share contacts, probably we could even organize online meetings, not just for my case, but for the whole audience, whoever is interested in having a one-on-one with them, for them to make themselves available. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think also it's important every time when you have a conference to have a follow-up event to ensure the learnings continue. Wonderful. Any other question or comment? All right. We have someone here, and then her. Okay.
So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry. My name is Pamela. I run a company called. I've really enjoyed being on this session. It was really insightful, seeing quite successful women sit and just talk about the issues that are affecting us who are running. And I'll call them entrepreneurs, so to say. So it's something about policy. I know you learn the startups enablers ecosystem, but what amount of advocacy are you looking up just to ensure we have more bezeshas, we have more, more successful startups coming up, and so we could sit and learn from them as well? Thank you.
Good evening. So my name is Albert. I work for a company called Double Feather Partners. So for me, I'm so happy for the discussions. We've learned a lot. My only comment in terms of a lighter note is how far are women going to support each other? We've seen so many companies, especially young startups, where the founder is a lady, but almost the entire staff are men. So how far are we going to support each other as women in this digital inclusion service? Thank you.
Thank you for that. We also take hard questions. Right, Hilda? We take hard questions. Any other question? Okay, so as maybe we'll wait for maybe two more. So speaking on the aspect for ASEC, so even the reason why ASEC formed in 2018, and Hilda's mentioned we had our first tech and community hub, which was called iHub at that time in 2010, was that we face a lot of challenges when supporting entrepreneurs, more so on the technology side. So you'd find the other SMEs were more supported by the government, whether it was funding, you also had banks that had designed different products for them, which also was understandable because the SME sector has been there longer. I think even it predates the third industrial revolution, But startups was coming up because of the technology adoption, which really was penetrated in Kenya when we had our first sea cable that was laid. So even looking at the time between 2010 to 2018, when ASEC was formed, we faced a lot of challenges with regulation and also how to protect investors who are coming in to fund the early stage startups. There were actually no incentives to attract them, and most of the time it was private sector leading that discussion. And even what happened when we first formed ASEC was that we started developing the startup bill that Hilda mentioned, and that was a private-led initiative because we understood for Kenya to really attract the right type of investment and even supporting these startups to grow and scale, there is need for a policy regulation or a framework or even some sort of incentives that can be embedded. So fast forward, Now we are 5 years in the association. We've done a lot of work. Currently, as we speak, the startup bill has already been uptaken by the ministry, which is still ongoing discussions. So that already is a win, whereby a private sector initiative has now been taken up by the government as its own initiative, which is actually a public good for all. So that is one. The second thing is that we've also been able to do at a national level is have county engagements, because we understand that startups are designing products and services that are tailored either to the grassroots community or for a national focus. We go to where they are. So what we've done as ASEC is actually map out all incubators, accelerators across the country and supporting startups to access that kind of incubator to support them to grow. Currently, as we speak, we have over 100 what we call entrepreneur support organizations that are placed all over the country. So if you go to Turkana, we have Startup Lions. If you go to Wajir, we have the Northern Innovation Incubation Hub. We have Red Cross that has started to support entrepreneurs there. If you look at Nairobi, we have also hubs. Central Kenya, we also have. So if you're looking at the geographical mapping of Kenya, we actually have these entrepreneur support organizations that can support them. Now, looking at the actual startups and how we're actually guiding them, we've tried to link up our own community with the community of investors to now have concrete discussions about how can we design investment packages that can target the low ticket sizes. That's looking at 250,000 USD down to 50,000 USD. Because even if you look at your own business, you need that startup capital or even the catalytic funding of even just 50,000 USD just to help you unlock to the next level. So we have those discussions with them, and naturally they have borne fruit. The other thing that also we're doing now is designing a collaboration framework whereby we're support organizations, we're looking at the startups, and also we're looking at other about harmonization, investment side, how do funds or the different partners to actually collaboratively work together. Can we see a scenario where a bank can co-finance with another investor to bring more money into the startup? So those are things that are currently ongoing. It's a journey, and that's why strategic partnerships and collaboration are so important. And even you being part of this conversation, it also helps you to know that things are out there and they're happening. The final thing that I'll mention is that we've also developed an ecosystem portal, because when we were conducting our research last year on the digitization capacity of innovation hubs, at the same time also the digitization capacity of SMEs and startups, it was also quite wide. I know about the gender and the social economic groups, but even if you look at SMEs and also the entrepreneur support organizations, they need to be also digitized and supported. So from that research study, we conducted a training this year that targeted 120 organizations across the country as well. We brought them all to Nairobi, also for the same reason, for benchmarking with other existing organizations. At the same time also, we managed to develop an ecosystem portal, which is an online portal that will actually link academia. We're talking about investors, we're talking about development partners, we're talking about the academic institutions. We also cannot leave universities behind. We need them to come on board. We're also talking about financial partners like banks, like DTB, and many others. We're also talking about more so how we also share the great work and different that the government has available for you to tap into. We have the Women Fund, there's the Youth Fund, there's the Wezesha Fund, and many other funds that are even available for you as an entrepreneur. So the ecosystem portal is a convening of all those funds, and you can even have a look. Is this ecosystem.asec.ke? ASEC is ASEK.ke, and you can access that. But of course, I think bringing back to what the previous person who was asking the question, we need to have a follow-up session to also disseminate these kind of things. One thing, let me just close with this. We need you also to participate. We've been having a lot of public participation dialogues, even for the finance bill, before it became an act. We've been having discussions on the ICT bill that was happening last year, that I know Hilda was also part of that enormous discussion. We also want to call upon all entrepreneurs, youth, aspiring entrepreneurs, different partners to participate in these public participation dialogues. The reason is you also have your voice heard, and ASEC being an umbrella body, we can actually collectively represent you when it comes to talking to the government or different development partners when they're designing programs. So I'll stop at that, but hopefully I've answered your question. So I think the other question was for how far are women going to support each other? Tracy, I can see you already.
No, I wanted to answer that question because I was a culprit. When we founded our company, I was in Juja Boys, so you can see the trajectory. When we founded our company, then my two actually I was the only female co-founder first when we were 5, and then we dropped finally 3. One of the things that even I have had to be very deliberate about is breaking the stereotypes and biases. Women are emotional. I assure you, men are way more emotional. It's just a different showcase of the emotion, right? I'm sure you guys know yourselves. I'm sure. So some of those things, I've actually had to be very deliberate. The ladies in our office can, when you get angry, it is fine. When you burst out, it's not a big deal. We'll discuss about it afterwards that in a setting, at times you need to be able to do 1, 2, 3 things, but it is not something that then makes you feel powerless. Right? So that is one of the things, breaking those stereotypes, right? The second one is those things like women are not able to work longer hours, For me, I just say, as we are smarter, we'll finish something in 4 hours. So if you want to stay for 8 hours working, that's your problem. I will do my 4 hours efficiently. So for me, it has been taking those things that have been said to be negative things and then making them in terms of positives for those I sit with and I mentor or I work with, to ensure that the next place you go to, you have a foot to stand on. The other thing is putting them in leadership positions, right? So I run a startup, so we don't have a hierarchy of things. But for every product we build, you'll have a team lead. This is your product, lead it. Its success is dependent on what you do. Lead people, even us ourselves, by the way. If, for example, somebody is leading one product, or even a client's product, a PM, I sit under you. If I'm supposed to deliver a document, hold me accountable. Then you see now they are able to learn those skills of leadership. So for me, it is the thing about these stereotypes and biases have been built from primary, secondary, high school. We're having to break them in the office, which is a much tedious work, but that is my goal. Let's break them. If you are emotional, it's fine. Even him, he's emotional. We are all emotional. We are human beings. If you get tired easily, it is fine. How do you remain proactive in the hours where you work? Which other bias is it? Oh, techie is a black area. No. Me, I wear colorful things. I will wear my vitengas. Wear your pink from head to toe. Just because you're a techie does not mean you have to now wear the hoodies and the jeans. No. Come in your girly outfits. You will still have a voice. Nobody will discriminate you or look down upon you just because of that. Everybody will have a voice, and then everybody has an opportunity to lead and to grow. So yes, I am guilty of that, and that's why I had to passionately answer on that.
It's a journey. Every time I am looking to recruit one more software developer, out of 50 CVs that will come, 35 will be male. So you have to sit through those interviews and deliberately look out for the ladies. And even when the ladies come to the interview, they'll be more shy than the men. They will have more brilliant working experience, but they don't even know how to say it in their interviews or even put it on their CV. So you have to deliberately fish them out. And when you do, you also have to deliberately babysit them. I will call it babysit them, so that they can enhance their brilliance. Because at the end of it, I have realized it's more of a joy to work with the ladies than the men. Not that I don't work with men, I work with men, a lot of them. But I've had more men walking into my organization, and 1 month, 6 months, 3 months later, they just walk out of the door and not come back tomorrow than the ladies. The ladies are more careful, they will nurture their product better, they will nurture their work better, they are more accountable, they are more dedicated, in my opinion, but you have to go and look for them and deliberately bring them in and handhold them.
Yeah, I think
I'll focus more on what am I doing as Hilda. I think, the gentleman there said, we're not available. But the truth is, running a business is not easy, yeah? And so as a founder or as the CEO, you're mostly in your lonely world. And you're handling a lot of other issues and challenges. I'm still sitting here, but I can tell you part of my brain is somewhere else. But because there's always something you're dealing with, yeah? So there's other ways of still passing it on, at least from where people like us now sit. You can't just be everywhere. I can't be in every conference, yeah? So one of the ways, at least from where I sit, what I've done is I'm part of a lot of mentorship programs that I do, especially for women. In Strathmore, there is Akira Chicks. If you've heard of them, there's a lot of initiatives, Code for Women, and many, many others that I get to be part of, to just mentor, continue to mentor young women. There's a lot of women who reach out to me for advice on LinkedIn or whatever forum. I still respond. I really try as much as possible to respond. Sometimes I'm not the right person to advise them, and I know someone who is better than me in their field, so I recommend, go and talk to so-and-so, let me connect you to them. So I think for me, mentorship has been one of the ways I've given back, and it's in different forms. It's not the conventional way of let's sit together. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm going for this event, can you come? You'll meet me there, let's network, yeah? Sometimes it's, hey, can we meet in this event where I think you will also benefit, or can you come, or can you go for this session, you'll meet other women. So I think mentorship remains as a key way for women to continue to support each other. I think also as part of passing it on, those success stories, there's many ways to inspire people, but I think if we can put more success stories on the map and say, talk about our failures. Sometimes we talk about only the successes, but I meet so many of my mentees, and the first thing I start to tell them is the hard things and the failures, and they ask me, wait a minute, but you're not talking about the successes. And I tell them, because I want to explain to you the process. Because people can talk about the outcome, but if you don't talk about the process, then we are lying to each other. So my focus in a lot of my sessions has been my failures and my challenges and some of the things that I need support and help. And I think that way I've been able to really help other women to also understand, you don't need to fear. You don't need to fear the challenges when they come. You don't need to walk away because now you're facing talent issues. Like right now as we grow, our biggest challenge has been people. How do you continue to build a very good team as you grow a company and scale? That's a big, big challenge. Not to say that there are not people out there who we can hire, but also, as she said, the quality of people, sometimes it's a big issue in this industry of ours. So we continue to do that. We continue to look for partnerships, but more importantly, just making sure that you're also in the right place at the right time as a woman is really important, because that's where it starts.
Oh, we have one more question, yeah. And even as she's getting the microphone, I just want to also add, by nature, myself, I'm normally a challenger. So when I normally hear those questions, I wonder who actually came up with the narrative and said women are their worst enemies? Who actually said that? Because the challenge with our society today, and it's actually become even more prominent with the digital space, is that we like forwarding those kind of notions, phrases, notations, and we share it over and over, not only even to our community of friends, but even to our children, our nieces, nephews, so it becomes something that catches wildfire. So my first question is, who actually said women are their worst enemies? From my own experience, I'm part of so many women groups. One thing about women is that we like being together. we're in many groups together, we talk, maybe not always about business, but we talk about many things. So it's always how can we use this community to also build each other up and actually maybe perhaps start talking more about business. How do we start supporting each other, not only on our social challenges and problems, but also now starting to think about how can I open the door for the next woman. One thing we try to do actively at ASEC is that even our board is more women than men, which I think is a great thing. The second step to that is we actually seek each other out. For example, if an event is happening, and like what Hilda said, be in the right place, we share it out. Again, also we're inclusive, we include both men and women, but also I know recognizing women are generally shy just because of the background that we're coming back with. Remember, if you trace all the challenges back into the Industrial Revolution, back into the first agrarian revolution, most women were based in the home. They were never in business. It's only now in the third and fourth Industrial Revolution that you start seeing women coming up. And that is also not a bad thing. So if we can also understand our historical challenges, it now helps us to be more awakened and to actually take up opportunities actively. And we do it in collaboration with men as well, because that's why we have Kelvin here, because it's important that it's not only a women-driven initiative, we also need men champions. So I want to challenge Albert, come and help us learn more, share what the men are doing that women can embrace more, because in that way we have inclusivity and we can go further together. Yeah, but over the next question.
Yes, thank you so much. This space has been very, very inspiring to hear your stories. And so I'm a journalist. I'm just collecting stories. And I'm really curious about, as women in tech, especially not now when you're famous, because that's a very formidable group sitting up there. When you were starting out, that is when you were in campus or just beginning to have this idea you want to start something and nobody knows you. As a woman, maybe you can tell us a personal story, something a challenge that you had to overcome, and yeah, just to inspire us a little bit. Thank you.
My apologies for always starting these conversations. The reason I have picked this up is because I'll never forget the one challenge I ever experienced. I'm a very tough, I might be small physically, I'll not beat you, but then I'll hold back when you tell me no, and we'll have the conversation. The first time I entered my class in JQuat, again, I told you the disparity of the numbers. I entered with very long white nails and high heels and my black, and then I think I had worn an orange top. I always remember because my classmates always remember it. And everyone thought I came with the lowest grade. I have no idea why, right? It turned out to be the other way around. But when I remember some of those things, but I remember at work when I started our company, we went for a meeting somewhere, I'll not mention where. And luckily enough, my co-founders were my classmates, so they were used to me and they were used to my stubborn, and they already knew who I was beyond me being a woman. So that's what I was used to. Then at home, I'm the firstborn, so you take up responsibility, right? And my mom and my dad are very great at giving each of us a chance. And I entered into this meeting, and then I think somebody remarked that I didn't need the bigger chair, right? So that was a size issue, it was fine. Then I laughed and I sat. And then this man who is actually in his 60s, somebody who's way older than my father, then he said, "Don't worry, baby girl, you're fine." You're sitting, you're startled, you've not started the meeting. And then he said, "Yeah, you can be scooped up." I said, you're in shock. You know the moment of shock, anger, you have all the emotions, passing through your head and your brain and your mind. Then he asked me, "What are you doing in this meeting?" Oh my God. I have never been offended that much in a space of like 10, 15 seconds. And then I told him I'm the founder of Zinamis. And then he said, "Oh, you're pretty and you're also smart." I said, Anyway, it was a middle mix of emotions, but you can imagine the offense that takes place in a very short span of time. And by the way, even afterwards, he told me, I'm very smart. He was so impressed. So that is one of the spaces where I entered and I just realized I might speak tech, I might feel as if I'm brilliant and all those things, but I'm still a woman. You know, it was such a stark reminder that it was very offensive. I'll never forget it. The saddest part, I think, was the men in the room said nothing. Some even giggled. You know, my founders were there just thinking, she's going to kill us. So they're just praying that this guy keeps quiet. But it was a reminder that even as a techie, even as a CEO, even as a brilliant person, even as we run away from our agenda and want to say that it doesn't matter, it actually matters and people see it. Yeah.
Okay, this is a difficult one. I am basically a salesperson in technology, and my work involves doing corporate pitches with the telco operators for new connectivity, with the corporate potential customers to sell the values of our product. And almost always, this started way before, but almost always, whenever you enter the room, you're one of probably 5 or 6 contenders who's female. And almost always you're dismissed. Not because of your skill, not because of the way you present, but because you're a girl. What I have learned through time is to be very persistent and to speak very loudly. So whenever I go into a room, I will be the loudest person, and I will start talking about equality so that by the time you get ideas in your head, I have tackled you. So that by the time also I give my pitch, you will listen to me for the value that I offer. And you will also know that I'm very loud, so I'm about to make your life very hard unless you give me an opportunity. So it's not easy. It's never been easy. I don't think it will start being easy now, but hopefully, eventually, we will convince the rest of the world that we are as worthy as everybody else. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know one exact moment because there's so many situations, especially as you said, at the early days where you get to ask yourself, am you in the right room? Yeah. Especially as a woman, I think there's so many times, at least for me, even with my first company, I asked myself, am I in the right place? Should I just go back and take that job? And it was, could be comments of, I don't think this is going to work out, I think someone else can do this better than you. It could be just underestimating the experience, especially even as even in my second journey, I think that's been the case. You walk in some of the doors and it's like, you tell people you have this amount of experience, but they still doubt. So for me, I will say time, of course, let my work speak for myself. I don't talk much. I like to do more and let my work be seen. But of course, it's really important, I think, over time, and I think that's why we are all sitting here now, because we fought those stigmas. We fought those voices in our head that was telling us someone else can do it better than you. But I think for me, what really helped me in my early days, especially when I was starting, is I had a very, very strong support system, and which I still have. So I have, when you see us sitting here, at least let me speak for me, when you see me sitting here, it's not that it's just because I did it by myself. It's because of the support system I had from the day I started my journey of entrepreneurship. So I have very, very strong mentors, and I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate. Most of them are male. I have very, very strong, life coach. who I still work with in my journey now, and of course my family as well, and my partners and people I've been part of. So I think if you can focus on building a strong support system, especially for the people who are here and they're starting, if you can focus on getting that strong support system, and most of the time it's people around you. Don't look far. You know, don't come here and say, if Hilda is not sitting in my board, then I don't have a support system. No. The people around you, the people who are mentoring you, working with you, helping your resilience to be stronger, those are the people who you call a support system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So given the time, allow me to end the discussion there. A big thank you to all my panelists. And even before I release you, I just wanted to do a high-over summary of what we've discussed. So the entire session was looking at policies for gender and socioeconomic communities and how the best practices we can actually embed in that. So I've picked out 4 key things. There's a lot that they have mentioned, and please, I know that it's actually being streamed live, so we have an opportunity to keep revisiting those concepts, but one of them was on culture. So culture plays a very big role, and looking at social cultural norms, looking at the biases, I think actually something we never really deep dived into. But even as each one of us, can we also be able to identify our own biases when it comes to working with gender and also socioeconomic challenged or communities? The second one is also looking at mentorship and coaching. There's a lot of need to do more mentorship and coaching, and even tying that very closely with gender inclusive and also marginalized inclusive programming when it comes to designing training programs, when it comes to hosting events. Can we actually say that this space has the capability to allow someone who is physically disabled to access it? So how then do we design spaces? How do we design our programs? And even us as entrepreneurs, how are we also designing our products and services to ensure many people can actually have access to them, no matter where they are? And that ties in very closely with inclusivity. So with technology, we are actually promoting inclusivity. No matter where you are, you can actually access internet. If you have the device, you can access an opportunity from across Kenya or across the region or across Africa or globally, and that already is an opportunity that is given to all gender and also social economic challenged communities. And the fourth one, of course, is looking at partnerships and collaboration. We need to actually leave, I'll borrow Hilda's words, leave our ego, leave our logos, and our interests behind, because in that we now start tackling the main big challenge. And remember, Kenya, if you look at it, we're strategically placed within Africa. We have a very progressive president who is really selling the African narrative. How are we tapping into that, and how are we also thinking Pan-African? So there's need to really tap into partnerships, but we can only do that if we leave our egos behind. Finally, I just want to encourage each one of us to be champions. Whatever you're doing, whether you're a student, you're an investor, you are a trainer, a coach, you're providing financial services, what can you do at an individual level to encourage more digital inclusion within the gender and also socioeconomic communities? We all come from different backgrounds and different counties. How are we supporting that to happen and see that through? So I just want to say a big thank you to all my panelists for making their time and also being vulnerable to share their insights and their journey as well. A big thank you to each and every one of you also as well for staying behind and also being open to listen and having this tough discussion. And finally, also to the larger partner, which is Nairobi County. We really want to thank our governor for actually organizing this Innovate Nairobi. It's the first ever of its kind, and we really want to appreciate that for organizing this platform and convening all of us, because none of us actually paid entrance fee to access this opportunity. And that already is reducing the barriers of information for all stakeholders within Nairobi to participate in the Innovate Nairobi event. So a big thank you, and I can allow my panelists to exit as we give them a round of applause, kindly. We continue clapping until they sit. They have put in a lot of work. Oh, sorry, let me ask you, do we have the cameraman for a quick photo? Okay, great. So yeah, you can just have a seat there at the front, and then I'll allow Grace to come back and close the session. But thank you so much, everyone. I've been your moderator, Masiki Malat. This has been really phenomenal for me. I'm also a big champion for both genders, actually, because it's the only way to move forward and have an inclusive society. But more for the women, we are here to support you. We're here to be your role models. Reach out. We're here to provide our own networks to help you grow and thrive. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely afternoon. I hand over to Stacy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Nduta. I'll please, I'm so sorry, request the panelists to return to the stage for the quick photo, because this will be the background. Kindly. Thank you. Another round of applause as they make their way up. I would like to first and foremost appreciate Mercy so much. As members of ASEC, Kayana, we have really benefited in terms of collaboration, which has really been emphasized. It's okay, come up.
Easy come, easy go. That's just how you live. Oh, take it all, but you never give. Should've known you was trouble from the first.
So don't hesitate to look at the photographer in yellow.
Why were they open? Gave you all I had and you tossed it in the trash. You tossed it in the trash, you did. To give me all your love is all I ever ask. 'Cause what you don't understand is I'd catch a grenade